The biggest moral dilemma in season 2 of the Walking Dead game from Telltale Games didn't even make it into the game. I'm talking about the better to sleep ending. The ending where Clementine has to choose between whether to leave AJ in the snow, to die in the blizzard by himself, so that she could potentially save her own life, or to sit down and die alongside him. It was cut because it was seen as way too dark, but I think it's a very interesting moral conundrum. It might be even more interesting than the issue with Sarah. So the issue with Sarah, when we talked in the last video, had to do with leaving her behind, and there was a lot of commenters that thought that the best thing to do would be to leave her behind for the idea of survival of the fittest. And there were some that said, well, it may not be the moral thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And so I wanted to discuss for a minute what the differences are between the types of morality. Obviously, we've talked a lot about deontology and utilitarianism, but there's also objective, subjective, and situational morality. And when those things apply and when they don't apply, and why they're important, because I think that's something that a lot of people forget. I've had a lot of comments over the videos, especially when I'm talking about The Walking Dead, that will argue that we're living in the zombie apocalypse in this scenario, right? There is no more morals. You can't be moral. Being moral is a thing of the past that died with society. It's now survival of the fittest, every man for himself. And that doesn't work. That just straight up does not work. It doesn't matter if it's The Walking Dead, if it's a post-apocalyptic, you're living in the zombie world, or if it is we have a fall of society as we know it, or if you're looking at prehistoric man. Morality is and always will be a pivotal part of a social species like human beings. We have it inherently in us because we need it to survive. Every man for himself only works for a short period of time. And eventually you're going to get sick. You're going to get hurt. You're going to stumble. You can be by yourself and you twist your ankle and now all of a sudden you can't get food and you're going to die. We rely on each other for a reason. And the people that have relied on each other, the people that are best at being social are the ones that survive the longest. The Walking Dead, the reason why the show, the movies, the comic books, not movies, the game, the comic books, the reason why all of that stuff kind of throws humanity into the blender and tries to pretend like morality is no longer in existence is because they need the drama. But in reality, human beings need each other. We need the social contract that exists. And that's what morality brings, is a social contract. It's something that allows us to make decisions to help each other out, to look out for each other, but also to look out for ourselves. So I asked you guys on the community tab in a poll about what you thought about morality, whether it was subjective, objective, or situational, because those are the three big things outside of utilitarian and deontology. Those are the three big things that I think a lot of people either confuse or mix up or aren't sure about. Objective morality, which 15% of you said you thought that morality was objective, would be morality that was basically set in stone. There's no changing it. It's not an opinion. It's nobody handed it down. It's just, these are the things that are true regardless of where you are, who you are, any of that stuff, right? The problem with objective morality is that we don't really have a good set standard for objective morality. It's not like gravity, where you know that gravity exists because we can fire rockets into space and we can drop things and watch them fall to the earth. It's one of those deals where there's no objective standard. There's no objective moral, compass, right, in the universe. The closest thing we have to it is our empathy as human beings, our empathy and sympathy that help us to kind of interact with each other and understand where each other are coming from for situations, right? Subjective morality, which I think a lot of people get confused with objective at times, it could be handed down by a god, where the morality, what is and isn't moral, is subject to that god's whims and will and what he wants or she wants. Or it could be subjective to the society at large, where you live, what time you live, certain things that were considered moral 300, 400, 500 years ago, or immoral 300 or 400 or 500 years ago, are considered the opposite today and in different parts of the world. And it changes over time. It changes as our understanding evolves, as we start to understand each other more, as we understand how our actions impact each other, that kind of thing. So that morality is subjective, but it's not a bad thing for it to be subjective because it allows us to change and understand where we're wrong, where we can say, oh, maybe being gay isn't wrong, which a lot of societies thought throughout history that there was a moral problem with that, right? Maybe that's not the case, and we can change that. Different things happen in different ways, right? Situational morality, though, and is where we kind of get into things where people say, well, it's changed because of the zombie apocalypse, right? It's the situation has changed, therefore what is moral has changed. And situational can actually change moment to moment. One moment it seems immoral to shoot somebody else, right? It seems more immoral to kill somebody. But then the next moment they're getting ready to kill you, and it just makes more sense. I got to kill them first, right? I want to survive. So situational ethics is what a lot of people think of when they think of the zombie apocalypse. They think, well, everything changes moment to moment. You never know what to expect. And when you're traveling alone or with a very small unit, 2, 3, 4 people, that can make sense to have that situational kind of ethics. But even within the group, there is an agreement. Usually it's an unspoken agreement. Sometimes it's blatantly spoken. But there is an agreement on what's okay and what's not okay, right? If a group, let's say that the group in the end of season 2, right? They were walking along. Let's say Rebecca dies. Everybody's starving to death. And obviously she does, but let's get rid of the Russian shootout there at the end. And let's say that Rebecca's died, everybody's starving to death, and they start to question, maybe Luke speaks up first and says, there is something we could eat. And he looks over at Rebecca and says, we need something to put in our bodies, right? And now the group has to decide, is that a moral action? Is that something I want to partake in? We saw back in season 1 where we had the group on the farm that had resorted to cannibalism really early on. But is there a point that becomes okay? When does our group decide that that's moral or that's all right? And it goes on to other things where the group has to decide. The group could decide later on that maybe this person stole something, and we know that stealing is bad. We have to have a standard there. You have to know where you're going, what you're doing, what to expect within the group. If you go to 400 Days is a great example. When you have Roman and the group at the gas station where they have to decide how to handle the outsider. And that's probably one of the best examples I've seen as far as the way morality is handled, because Roman says, we got to decide what to do. And whatever decision we make is what we're going to live with. And if you decide to kill the man, well, one of the women can't take it. One of the members of the group can't take it. She decides to steal some stuff later on and try to escape, try to get out. Now, by that point, it's become a dictatorship. Things have shifted. But Roman's still straight up with, he's consistent and says, no, this isn't okay. This is the rule. You steal something, you got to be killed. That's just the way it works. And that consistency gives the group something to kind of lean on. It could get a little bit overbearing, and in that case, it winds up being enough to potentially push you to leave, and it can make it a miserable place if not everybody agrees to it, but at least you have a standard to live by. Take that in comparison with a situation with like Kenny in season 1 of the Walking Dead game, where he is pragmatic and wants to drop a block of salt on Larry's head in the freezer, right? He's trying to save his family. He's trying to save the group. He sees Larry as a potential threat. He might come back. But flip that around when it's his son and the consistency falls apart. And that's the difference in the groups and what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. It's important to have some kind of solid foundation that everybody can agree to that you can go along with. And that is where morality comes into play in society. And that's where morality would come into play even in the zombie apocalypse. Morality doesn't get thrown out the window just because there's no laws anymore. Morality was around long before there were laws and long after there's a society. As long as people are around, as long as social species are around, there will always be a moral contract that societies live by. We even see it in the animal kingdom. There are groups of apes where they spend time grooming each other, taking care of each other, keeping each other clean. The apes that don't participate in that, that don't clean other people or other apes, they don't get groomed back. The rest of the group says, nope, you're out. We're ostracizing you. Because that is a moral standard, more or less, for how that society functions. And that's going to work anywhere you're at, even in the Walking Dead universe. And so when we take that and we apply that to a situation like something with Sarah, and we say, okay, well, morally speaking, there's what we accept and what we don't accept. And if we accept that Sarah, she is one of those people that is not able to take care of herself, she's not able to be a part of the group, we have to let her go. We have to let her, we have to leave her behind, because that's going to save Clementine, it's going to save Jane, it's going to save Luke, potentially it's going to save other people down the road. That's the choice that people make. To stay consistent there, when it comes to AJ, if you were given the choice later on, you would have to leave AJ behind. You would have to be consistent with that. Otherwise, it all falls apart. Now, all that being said, and I know that's a lot to digest and a lot to take in, but morally speaking, the reason why we should pay attention to morals, the reason why this is such an important topic, morals and ethics and that kind of stuff, isn't necessarily because it's going to always give us the right thing to do. We have talked in other videos about how sometimes the moral thing to do isn't necessarily the thing that you should do. But it's important because when it comes down to it, we have to decide what we are willing to accept. What are we willing to live with? What do we want to be a part of? Is it worth living if you lose all of society? That's a topic that's been discussed in multiple other places. And it's even kind of been brought up in ways in The Walking Dead, where do you want to live in a world where morality is kind of thrown out the window, where people don't care about each other, where everybody's just a raider looking out for number one, like that's all they care about is just survival? Is surviving at that point even worth it? Do you want to live in a world where you have to worry every single day about whether or not somebody is going to, the person laying next to you is going to kill you? What kind of world do you want to live in? I know for me, if that's the situation, if it comes down to it, I don't want to be a part of that world. I want nothing to do with that. It's better to be dead and not having to deal with the survival of, everybody looking out for number one, nobody caring about each other, getting rid of society completely, than to be in a society where nothing matters. There's no rules. There's no just do whatever you do, whatever you want to do to survive, because that at its base goes against everything humanity stands for, everything that we are as humans, the entire social aspect. It goes against all of that stuff, and it throws it all out the window, and it makes it not even worth being around. But I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to morality and pragmatism and objectivity and subjectivity. It's a very deep and complicated. There's going to be a lot more instances where we can bring this kind of stuff up. I've got some other videos planned where I'm going to be talking about things like the morality. We're going to have some fun with the morality of like Harry and the Hendersons, Bigfoot, that kind of thing. More Walking Dead stuff, obviously, but I've got a lot of other things. Superheroes. I've got the morality of superheroes coming up. That was actually suggested by in a comment not too long ago. So I've got all of that I'm going to be talking about, and so we're going to be unpacking a lot more of this as we go. But I want you guys to comment down below and tell me, did anything that I said change your views? Does it give you pause to maybe think about, maybe you're a moral pragmatist, maybe you thought that morality is situational, and now you're kind of rethinking it. Maybe it's not so much. Maybe it is actually subjective, something that we should have in place that is important. Maybe you thought that, morality goes out the window with the zombie apocalypse happening. And that kind of change. What's your views and thoughts on those? I'm interested in hearing all of that. That is all I've got for this one, though. I want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.